This is the Bears Barroom Radio Network. Parental discretion is advised.
Costello has time. Looks for the end zone. Jump ball. Deflected. Caught. Touchdown Parkinson. The big man on the catch.
Short side option. Thomas keeps. Nowhere to go. Yetur Gross-Matos. Slam at the door.
Talbot didn't feel the backside pressure and he's dropped. Who else? It's Grant Delphin again.
Drink up, everybody! It's a new edition of Draft on Tap with Danny Shimon, our chief scout at Bears Barroom, and I'm Aldo Gandia. Shane Marsaw is unable to join us tonight, but don't you worry, we've got a great interview up ahead with Matt Lowe of Lindy's Sports. He is the editor of their College Football National 2019 preview, and I think you're really going to like what he's got in store. But first, let me welcome in Danny. Danny, how you been? We haven't talked in a while.
Mr. Gandia, how have you been, my friend? It's been way too long since the last time we spoke.
Yeah, well, I understand you've been spending some time with the kids. They were like, who are you? I've never seen you.
Yeah, grinding away at tape, writing scouting reports. It takes away time from the family, unfortunately. But once the draft was over, once our, we kind of went into hibernation, if you will, here in our off season. I spent some time with I have two kids. I have a 11-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old son, and just doing small things, nothing crazy. Just watching movies, having ice cream, going for long car rides, stuff like that. Stuff that you miss out on. So, it's been great just spending a lot of time with the kids. And now I'm got my batteries recharged. I'm energized. I'm getting ready to start looking at some of the prospects for the 2020 draft.
Well, yeah, and you told me that you've got a list already compiled of about 200 plus seniors that you're going to keep an eye on during the season as potential prospects for the NFL in 2020's the 2020 draft, huh? Yeah.
So what I do is generally I go with the seniors and I make a list. I compile a list of roughly around 250 seniors that I feel are going into this upcoming season have draft eligible grades, are actually legitimate prospects for the NFL. So I compile the list. That should be done towards the later end of this month. I'll have a final list all hammered out, and then we'll have it, out in the hands of our listeners here, and then so you guys can have an idea of the guys that a lot of these NFL teams and scouts already are looking at, and then of course that list will change as the season goes on. Some players get removed because they play themselves off the list. Other players play themselves onto the list, so that's going to be constantly changing, constantly updating, and then once the senior list is done, I'll move on over to the underclassmen, the juniors, or redshirt juniors, so on and so forth, and I do a top 100 of those guys and guys that I feel, again, same thing, guys I feel that have a chance to be NFL players or guys that have a chance to be drafted, so on and so forth. So that should be out by the tail end of July, and then so going into the upcoming college football season, our listeners and all you guys would have a list of roughly around 350 guys, both seniors and juniors, to kind of gauge and look at. And again, both lists will be updated throughout the season.
Excellent. Boy, oh boy, that's a lot of work. And I hope that the kids get a good look at you before you start really digging into this stuff, because they probably won't see you for a couple of months at least.
Yeah, I'll sneak away for a weekend here and there, but that's about it.
There you go. All right, I just want to let our listeners know of what our plans are for Draft on Tap as we're molding this show as the weeks go on to try to create for you, our loyal followers, information that you're going to find really handy and entertaining. And so Danny and I have been talking about Draft on Tap the next several episodes during this offseason, kind of being a overlook of what's happening in college football. Get our feet wet with what's going on with the upcoming 2019 college football season, and also start to talk about the prospects that Danny is going to be scouting on behalf of Bears Barroom. And so, but also also the show Draft on Tap is also going to take a more national scope, so that if there are fans in Arizona, Los Angeles, Miami, New England who want to learn a little bit about what Danny's thoughts are on a particular prospect, or Shane, or whoever our guests are on prospects, then they will tune into the show. So it's kind of our way of our flexing our wings a little bit, and with the global reach that we have here at Bears Barroom, we kind of said to ourselves, well, why not even extend that to people who just want to talk about college prospects, no matter if they're Bears prospects or not. So that's kind of our plan here, and we'll continue to shape and mold the show as the weeks go on. And if you folks, you listeners, have any suggestions as to where we should take the show to, please let us know. Danny, what's your Twitter account? People can contact you directly.
At @DShimon, at DSHIMON56. Again, it's at DShimon56.
Excellent. And, of course, at Bears Barroom is our Twitter account there. So let's go to Matt Lowe now of Lindy's. This is a pre-recorded interview that Danny and I just actually finished up a little while ago. I think you're going to really like Matt Lowe's take on what's going on in the college football season. So let's go to that now.
I'm doing great, man.
Great.
Hey, Matt. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing awesome. Appreciate y'all having me.
Well, we appreciate you carving out time, because I am taking a look at the Lindy's Sports College Football National 2019 preview, and I bet you are exhausted right now, you and your team, of putting together such an excellent publication. I mean, this is a page turner, page after page, loaded with fantastic information, with information as recent as the spring games. So this, I bet you've had a lot of sleepless nights up until about now, huh?
I have, man. And to be honest with you, I've edited about 1,400 pages of copy over the last 5.5 weeks. So it's been pretty mind draining, to say the least.
I bet. And well, pat yourself on the back, because again, this is a page turner, and I advise all of our followers to pick up a copy of this publication. Again, it's Lindy's Sports College Football National 2019 Preview. I found it at our bookstore at Borders, and then I went on Amazon just to make sure it was on Amazon. There's only 3 copies left, Matt. You're going to have to talk to Amazon to get more copies, because this thing is selling like hotcakes.
Hey, man, that's a good problem to have, and we just recently, as last year, got on to Amazon. It's kind of a chore to get on there with the publication, so especially with as many covers as we do. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, it's been a good seller for us, and people like yourself that are having us on the air and letting us talk about our product is also very helpful, and we're very appreciative of everybody that does that for us.
Great. Well, let me tell you a little bit about what we're doing here with our show called Draft on Tap. It originally, over the last several months, we were dedicated to looking out for college football prospects that might fit the Chicago Bears system. And Danny Shimon, our chief scout, and Shane Marsaw did all the heavy lifting, and we did interviews with a number of people and so forth. And now, as the draft is over, we're starting to change the mood of the show, for lack of a better way of putting it, and now focusing on the college football season, which is why you're the perfect guest to kind of give us an overview of what's going to happen in the college football season. Maybe focus a little bit more on the SEC, because I understand that's your neck of the woods, right?
Yeah, it sure is. And we're here in Birmingham, Alabama, and so that's where, of course, we'll be going to media days here in a couple of weeks. And but yeah, man, it's always a fun time. Right now college football is kind of top heavy. There's only a handful of teams that could probably win a national championship. I personally would like to see more be able to do that, but there's a lack of great coaches out there too. Man, it's hard to build one of these powerhouse programs because people just don't have the patience nowadays, especially with the money these guys are making. But it's critical at times for people to be patient and see how a coach can build things up.
Well, I heard you say in a previous interview that you're kind of high on, Scott Frost over at Nebraska. You think that he might be, as you put it in the interview, an upcoming lion in the college football coaching ranks?
Well, yeah. I mean, you looked at him as a player. He was kind of an undersized guy, always played really hard. It's kind of funny, man, when you put, think about Nick Saban. There's a line in his senior yearbook at Kent State. He was known as a sure tackler, and you got a guy like Dabo Sweeney, who was a walk-on receiver there at Alabama. And you look at Scott Frost, those three guys right there, undersized guys, didn't have all the ability in the world, but they earned it, And when you're smaller, playing football, you got to be tough, because everybody else is pretty much bigger than you, and you got to have courage. And those three guys are great leaders. Another thing too, man, you got to do everything right to get on the field when you're a guy like that, because you're not going to catch the coach's eye right off the bat, So those guys but Scott Frost, man, when he was at Oregon, their offense was clicking, then he goes down to Central Florida and builds something there. We all know what they did there. And I will tell you, that was a good football team. They turned out NFL prospects. And you look at Nebraska now with Adrian Martinez there at quarterback. He's kind of the Mackenzie Milton. Then they got J.D. Spellman, who's a big play guy. And they added this true freshman, Wan'Dale Robinson, wide receiver, kind of running back guy, can do a lot for them. They made improvements on defense last year. So we're a team that's high on them. They finished winning 4 of their last 6 games, and they got a good schedule way it lays out for them this year at home. So in that Big Ten West, that division's wide open. So that we think they got a shot, and we think he's building something there, man. We really do. We're really believers in him.
You can't talk about college football without mentioning the transfer portal. It seems like every other day there was a big name heading into that transfer portal, switching teams. And I specifically want to hit on 3 quarterbacks here. Jalen Hurts going to Oklahoma, Justin Fields going to Ohio State, and Kelly Bryant going to Missouri. How do you think those 3 will fare in their new teams?
Well, I think Jalen's a perfect fit for what Oklahoma's done. I mean, or what Oklahoma's doing there with Lincoln Riley. I mean, their offense is going to be high-powered. Not a lot of defense played in that league. I mean, Jalen's a guy that can run and throw. He really developed his passing game last year. And it could have been a little Danny knows, but I think it was more Tua Tagovailoa. I mean, I think those two really had a good bond together. And Tua, of course, he could be the number 1 pick in the draft next year. I mean, he's that kind of a player. So we think Jalen's going to go into Oklahoma and light it up, just like the last 2 guys have. And moving to Fields, he's a guy that I'm intrigued to see how this all plays out this season. I think Justin's got a lot of ability. He's got a lot of skill. I'm not sure his mental makeup though, and that's what I'm interested to see. How when he faces adversity this year, how he handles it. And let me tell you guys, if Ohio State has an injury, if he goes down, they're in trouble. At the quarterback spot. And so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Ohio State's got great athletes. Chase Young's probably a guy that's could be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft next year at defensive end. J.K. Dobbins is a dynamic running back there. So they're going to be a good team once again. And getting to Kelly Bryant, interested to see how that fit goes, So he's a guy that can run really well. Last year they had Drew Lock, more of a passing, drop-back type quarterback. So it'll be interesting to see how Derek Dooley uses him on offense, because they got – I'll tell you, Missouri, they do have the bowl ban this year, but Missouri could be a factor in the SEC just because of their schedule. It's a pretty good home schedule for them. And they played good defense last year, and they got some weapons. Alberto's one of the best tight ends in the country. So they're going to be a factor. They might upset somebody. They might cost somebody a trip to the SEC championship game towards the end of the year. But all 3 quarterbacks, I thought they landed in good spots for themselves, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out with those guys.
Is there anyone else that I didn't name there that you have an eye on that you think might be an under-the-radar move that could propel himself and his new program to higher heights, if you will?
I'm interested to see how Tate Martell does at Miami. He was behind Dwayne Haskins, number 15 pick in the draft this past year. I'm interested to see how he does. Sawyer Smith, he's a kid that comes from Troy. Really good player. He went to Kentucky. I'm interested to see if he could go there and maybe play for them. But yeah, man. I mean, you never know. I mean, it's awesome to me though that fans in general, we get enamored with the star system, and this guy has this many stars, this guy has this many stars. But, I mean, Baker Mayfield was a walk-on quarterback, and what Gardner Minshew did, under Mike Leach last year. I mean, he was committed to Alabama at one time, but nobody knew who he was at East Carolina. And he goes out there and almost wins the Heisman Trophy. He was in the running for a little while. So you never know what quarterbacks can emerge. We always see faces that nobody knows about emerge at some spot, which it makes it interesting to me for those guys, because I tell you what, you can't evaluate every high school player. You can't evaluate every college player. And there's always guys that fly under the radar. And if they get into that right system, they can produce big things. Another guy, too, came to mind, Tommy Stevens from Penn State to Mississippi State. Joe Moorhead recruited him. He knows that offense. I'm interested to see if he could come in and maybe win that spot at Mississippi State down the road.
Yeah, that was my big question with Penn State is not only does Franklin have to replace Trace McSorley, but also Stevens is backup as well. So it'd be interesting to see how they do at quarterback there. But, locally here, with, being based in Chicago, Northwestern is quote unquote our Chicago team, and Hunter Johnson, a highly touted prospect that went to Clemson, transferred to Northwestern. He's playing his year. What are your prospects on Johnson? How he'll fare with?
Yeah. Another guy I failed to mention there, but hey, he was a 5-star recruit, if I'm not mistaken, one of the more highly recruited quarterbacks in America. And Northwestern, they won the Big Ten West last year. Nobody's really talking about them this year. I think we might have them a little ranked a little too low. We got them at 28 entering the year. But I think, they lost a couple of, 3 starters on the offensive line. So they're going to have to get that figured out and maybe play a little bit better defense than they did last year. But Patty Fisher's a guy I really like at linebacker. He's got us built kind of in the mold of Brian Urlacher, a guy that you guys know well up there. But Isaiah Bowser's a heck of a running back. Northwestern didn't really score a whole lot last year. They kind of struggled scoring points. So maybe Hunter Johnson could come in there and get that offense going. And because I think Northwestern's got the pieces on defense to have a really good defense.
Matt, how do you see the SEC playing out? I mean, it's probably the same old thing, Clemson and Alabama, right? Yeah,
I mean, look, guys, this is no offense to Clemson, too. It's not their fault. Nobody in the ACC is really any good. That's not their fault. But they don't really play their schedule's just not that hard. And, I got in a little Twitter argument the other day about a couple Clemson fans getting all over me because I said something about Alabama guys being tired in the game. But I don't think that had any bearing of what happened in that national championship game. Clemson just dominated them, period. But, when you have to play LSU, a Mississippi State, a Georgia, a Oklahoma, and then a Clemson at the end of the year, as opposed to Duke, Louisville, Pitt, then Notre Dame. That's a little bit different, man. I mean, Mississippi State had the top defense in the country. I mean, they had 2 first-round draft picks. 3 first-round draft picks. And I just think when you don't play, when you're playing teams that you can just walk out on the field and just destroy them, it allows you to play other guys and keep your team fresh. And again, I'm not making any excuse for Alabama whatsoever, but that was just a tail whipper. But I think that's what the Clemson's got going for it is they can win games and stay healthy, and that's very important. But with the magazine, we like Georgia. But when are they going to break through? They got to replace a lot of guys in the front 7. They're going to have one of the best offensive lines in the country. They're replacing their whole entire receiving core, and Jake Fromm, one of the more underrated quarterbacks in America, and the tricky thing too, guys, with ranking Georgia and Alabama in the top 4 is they're going to have to play probably. So Georgia can ill afford a loss, or Alabama. It's just tricky to say who will be in the playoff when both of them, usually are meeting in Atlanta for the SEC championship. So. We think LSU, though, can maybe push Alabama that game's in Tuscaloosa. So LSU, they got some good players, man. Grant Delpit, he's our defensive player of the year at safety. This guy, he can do it all, man. He plays the run. He can rush the passer, a great pass defender. And Joe Burrow there, who was a guy that came in and did a heck of a job for them last year. But they did lose their kicker, which is a key thing. I think Florida could be pretty good. We got them ranked number 6 entering the season, but got to get Felipe Franks back at quarterback, which is he really emerged under Dan Mullen last year. But their offensive line, man, they're replacing 4 starters. And that's just not an easy thing to do. But their schedule is pretty favorable for them to go, 10-2 and maybe win an 11th game in the bowl game. So, and Auburn, if you look at Auburn, they have Lindy's ranked top defensive line in the country. They got 5 senior starters back. They got pieces on offense. They got Seth Williams is a guy I've been down writing about Auburn for the last 10 years, and he's one of the more physically imposing kids I've ever come across. He's 6'3", 225-pound receiver. This kid's he's excellent in the air. I mean, he can make one-handed catches, and he's just a physical mismatch. And they got the fastest wide receiver in college football, Anthony Schwartz. But the key thing is that quarterback. If they can get that quarterback, which they're both dual threats, Bo Nix and Joey Gatewood, and having that dual threat back in Gus Malzahn's offense is key, man, because if you got a running quarterback in that system, linebackers got a hold for a split second. Defensive ends got a hold for a split second on zone read plays, and that can allow guys to get behind them and for big plays. So, it's going to be an interesting race. I'm really looking forward to how it shakes out. But if the SEC West is going to be about a grinder, man, it's so tough. And like Alabama guys, when you have to play an LSU, Mississippi State, an Auburn at the end of the year, then maybe a Georgia, it's a lot tougher road to get to the national championship than say Clemson.
I hear you. Hey, regarding Georgia, I've started to take a really special interest in that football team because it seems like under Ryan Pace, they're really looking at Georgia every time draft time comes around, and they're really acquiring some good players in Javon Wims and now with Riley Ridley. And I'm looking at their defensive backs. They're returning 2 safeties, J.R. Reed, who's a senior, and Richard LeCount, I believe his last name is, the 5'11" junior. Can you give us a quick scouting report on those 2 safeties?
Well, I mean, they're bigger, rangy guys, and they're being coached well, with Kirby Smart there. I mean, heck, Kirby Smart, he was probably pound for pound one of the best defensive backs to ever play for Georgia. And not really talk about him as a player, but he was a heck of a ball player, man. But they're smart guys, they're physical. They like to come up and hit. So and it was crazy you saying that, man. 2 years ago, I was at the Auburn-Georgia game, and I heard there was a Colt scout, a Brown scout, and I think the Seahawks, and they were all just like, man, there's so much talent on this field. That's what they were talking about. And Georgia, I mean, Kirby Smart, he's in a prime state there for producing talent. But those 2 guys at safety, man, they're going to have to be big for them as far as leadership goes because Georgia's replacing a lot in this front 7. I mean, they lost their 2 best pass rushers and a lot of leadership there at linebacker. So, which they got some young guys coming in that are good, but you still need some game experience and you still need some time to play with each other to really get to where you're gelling.
Yeah. Well, with Georgia, Matt, my main questions are, as you kind of touched on it earlier, they lost a lot of weapons on offense for Jake Fromm. Who will step up and be Fromm's main target this year? Will it be Holloman? Will it be Simmons? And then the other one is DeAndre Swift. He's definitely one of the more electric runners in college football, but can he be a full, carry the load type of back? Can he stay healthy for a full season?
I mean, that's an interesting question. This Brian Harrion kid, I think he really made strides for him. He's a senior guy, the backup for him. But Swift, everybody talks about him, not being that every down back, and I kind of disagree, man. I mean, he's 5'9", 215 pounds. He's one of those guys that if you have to tackle, all the time, that he just the low center of gravity. Those shorter, squatty guys, they're tough to tackle, man. Because they get leverage on you, and I think he can. And the way Georgia has been recruiting, the running back position. I just think they'll find somebody to spell him. But I have no doubt. I think DeAndre has every chance in the world to be a every down back, and I think he'll be a good one. And I think he could be an All-American this year.
And in terms of a weapon for Fromm, you think Holloman steps up or Tyler Simmons possibly?
Yeah, Holloman had a really good spring, and Demetrius Robertson's another guy that had a good spring for them. And, of course, they signed George Pickens from Hoover. He's right down the street from me. And George Pickens is a stud. I mean, the guy, he's a big guy, can go up, get the ball. Will he be ready or not? I don't know, but they're banking on him. And I think that's probably why he decommitted from Auburn at the last minute and went to Georgia, because he knew that he had a real good shot to play. I mean, at Auburn, I think he would have played, but there's some pretty good players that have experience in front of him. But they're counting on him to come in and play. And like I said, I watched him. He's a really good player, and he could be a guy that could come in and be a big-time contributor for him as a true freshman.
Let's zoom out a little bit and talk about some of the other teams in the nation. In Lindy's College Football National 2019 preview, you list a number of the storylines you'll be looking for this upcoming season. And at number 2, you label it Jim Harbaugh's Renaissance. And you talk a little bit about the offense now being handed over to a new offensive coordinator. Share with our listeners what the storyline is there at Michigan.
Well, the natives are getting restless. I mean, sooner or later, he's going to have to beat Ohio State. And we think it's going to be this year. Now, will it happen? I don't know. But Josh Gaddis, he was a guy at Alabama. I think he's going to bring the RPO deal up to Michigan. I think when you look at them the past couple of years, I mean, they're lining up in two tights and, 1980s football. And that's just kind of not working nowadays, man. And their offensive line was pretty good last year. I think it's going to be a strength this year because they've got 4 starters back and they got experience. Shea Patterson's a guy, in my opinion, when he was at Ole Miss, he was in a, spread them out, let me run around with make plays with my legs and my arm. And I think he's that type of player. I don't think he's a classic drop back passer. And he still had a good year last year. So I think they need to open things up. They got a great trio of receivers. I mean, Donovan Jones-Peoples, a good player. Nico Collins, good player. Tariq Black. That we got them ranked as having one of the best receiving corps in the nation. And they got All-American candidate there at cornerback and Lavert Hill. They're going to play good defense. They have the last couple of years, under Don Brown. So we think they just need to spruce up the offense a little bit and finally beat Ohio State, which we're banking on them doing this year.
And
how will the suspension of running back Chris Evans affect Michigan, you think?
I mean, it will because he's a good player, but we think they can find some other guys there to contribute. And like I said, if they plan on opening up and bringing that kind of Alabama offense there, I think the receiving corps is going to be used a lot more. And why shouldn't it? There's some really good players there at wide receiver. And we think Christian Turner is going to be a pretty good player for them too, young sophomore. So, I mean, it'll hurt them. But, I think they got guys there to withstand it and move along.
I was going to ask about Notre Dame. And in the magazine, one of the writers says that Notre Dame now appears like, their problems of being out of contention are over now, and they're kind of a legitimate team to look at in the top 10, top 15, whatever. And so my question is, quarterback Ian Book, is this guy a quarterback capable of taking a team into the college football playoff and contending for a national championship?
Sure. I mean, he did it last year, and the thing about Notre Dame is it's kind of their schedule. It's kind of like you don't know what you got. I mean, and this is the second time, they just got steamrolled in a huge game, and Bama steamrolled in 2012 in Clemson. I mean, they didn't have a chance, but I mean, I don't know if that's an athleticism thing or a speed thing or what, but I mean, because Brian Kelly, I mean, he comes down here in the South and gets players all the time.
Yeah.
And whoever's coaching their offensive line, I'm not sure who it is, or whoever's doing their offensive line talent is a genius, because they're putting out offensive linemen in the NFL left and right. So that's not the problem. I think they need to score more. I think they need to be a little bit more high-powered. And because, they played pretty good defense last year. Khalid Kareem's a guy that's a good defensive end for them. Julian Okwara is another guy at end is pretty good. They lost Jeremy Tillery, which is a big loss, but we think they're going to be a good. Aloy Gilman is a safety who transferred from Navy a couple of years ago. He's a hard hitter. He'll come up and stick you. Good player. But the thing with the Irish right now is, they've proven they can be a good team, but they haven't proven they can be elite. And I'm not so sure what that step is that they need to get to do that. But I think they're going to be a good team again. We got them ranked in the top 10, and we think they're still going to be a pretty good outfit.
Matt, I want to jump over to the Big 12. So a team that really intrigues me is Texas, and I know you guys have them ranked. I believe it's 11th in your rankings, and I really became a big Sam Ehlinger fan last year. Not only is the kid proved that he, the moxie and the leadership ability qualities, but the ability to not only make plays with his arm, but his feet really surprised me, and I think that really catapulted him in the eyes of many in the nation. I think he has a chance and an ability to contend with the Tuas and the Herberts and the Fromms for being one of the top quarterbacks chosen in next year's draft. I'm just curious what your take is on Ehlinger at the next level, and also Texas overall. Can they be a Final Four team? Is that, I know they lost a lot of talent on defense, but can Ehlinger and Colin Johnson and some of the other offensive weapons he has, can they contend to be one of the Final Four teams?
Sure, I think so. Now, they're going to have some guys step up on defense because they lost, a lot in their front seven. I think they got one guy back in the front seven. But Ehlinger, I love him. And here's a guy, it goes back to the recruiting thing, and it's like, a lot of these kids nowadays, it seems, we get in the transfer portal if they don't play. Well, Sam Ehlinger is a guy that grew up wanting to be a Texas Longhorn. He'll give his heart and soul for that school. He'll give his right arm to play for Texas. And that's the kind of guys that I think that you want playing in your program. He wants to win for Texas. And that goal line runs last year in the Sugar Bowl against Georgia, they ran him 4 times and he finally got in. I was just like, man, this guy's tough as nails. And I love everything about him. I think he's a heck of a ball player. He can run and make plays with his legs, and got a good arm. Colin Johnson's a heck of a wide receiver, big guy, 6'6", about 220, 225. Go up and get it. Texas lost some pretty key linemen, on offense too. So, but as far as them being a contender in the Big 12, sure. And I'm stoked for that LSU Texas matchup in week 2. I think that's going to be a dandy, and Texas gets them and at home, and whoever wins that game, man, that could be huge for momentum, But regardless, if either one of them lose that game too, it'll be a good barometer of where they are, because both teams are good. And I think when it comes down to Oklahoma and Texas, it's kind of like who can outscore the other, because neither one of them are really great on defense, but I think Texas is improving there, So and Oklahoma, when they went out and got Alex Grinch from Washington State, one of the more underrated coordinators in America, I thought that was a real good move because, guys, Oklahoma hadn't played defense in a long time, and that's what's holding them back from a national championship. I remember back with Bob Stoops and they had Teddy Lehman and all them guys. Those dudes, woo! You'd be lucky you scored 10 points. Now it's like everybody scoring 45 on them. That's just too many. You got to play defense. You got to play defense to win a championship in any sport, in my opinion.
Yep. Right. So. That West Virginia Oklahoma game last year was a scene out of Madden. Looks like there was no defense whatsoever. But yeah, you're right. LSU at Texas is going to be awesome, and so is Oklahoma versus Texas as well. Another Big 12 team that I'm really interested in is Iowa State. Matt Campbell lost a lot of guys on offense. David Montgomery obviously here to the Bears. Hakeem Butler went to Arizona. But defensively they got some talent. And do you think in the Big 12 that they can win with defense?
I do, and I like Campbell. I mean, he impressed me. I mean, because I watch probably over 200 games a year at college and NFL every year, and I have done that for a long time. And he's one of those guys that I really like. I think he's a hell of a coach. I mean, because again, I think if you want to win, you have to play defense. You know, you have to play defense unless you're playing in a conference where just no defense is being played. But when you get to a big stage, somebody's going to beat you because you can't play good enough defense. And that's what his program. I mean, David Montgomery, I think the Bears got a steal on that guy. That dude's a player, man. He can run. Yeah. And they lost him, but Brock Purdy, big, strong quarterback, you know, good player. They got their line back. Their front seven is pretty much back on defense. You know, they were 14th in the country in run defense last year, you know, and just played good on that side of the ball. And this is a team that beat Oklahoma 2 years ago, you know, and they won a lot of games towards the end of the year. Only lost to Texas, you know. I think they'd have won about 9 in a row there at the end. So I like where Iowa State is going. And I tell you what, I heard a stat on them that Iowa State hadn't had a first-round draft pick in like 42 years. Mm. You know, and that's just crazy. I mean, that's for any school, that's just a long time. But I think they're going to get one eventually with Matt Campbell there if he can stay there, because, you know, if he wins big again this year and he keeps winning there, the big boys are going to come after him, and it'll all be if he wants to leave or stay there. But really, really one of the teams that I like in the Big 12.
Right. I mean, they may not have a first-round pick, but they got NFL talent on that defense. I mean, you got Jaquan Bailey, Ray Lima at defensive tackle, Marcel Spears, even the safety Greg, you know, Eisworth, I think has some NFL potential, you know. And so, yeah, definitely, I agree with you. I think Matt Campbell's on the way up, and I think the Iowa State program as a whole is on the way up.
Yeah, I think Baylor's another team. I like Matt Rule. I think Matt Rule can coach. You know, I mean, you win at Temple, you're a pretty good coach. I mean,
he was this close to being the Jets coach. I mean, but they were trying to manipulate his staff with what the rumor were, and then he ended up going back to Baylor.
Oh, really? See, I didn't heard that, but Jets are, man. I mean, I don't know what they're doing. I don't think they know what they're doing, to be honest. They got some good pieces though. But I like him. I think he's another guy that likes to play defense. You know, I mean, at Temple under him, they had a few guys drafted. I can't remember the defensive end's name that played for him that is a really good terror off the edge. But, I mean, he's a guy that, I mean, Baylor started playing some decent football last year. They weren't getting blown out. I mean, they played some teams tough. So I think they're another program on the rise with him as coach.
Matt Lowe of Lindy's Sports. Before we get you out of here, I got to ask you to give us a quick evaluation on the Bears' 2019 draft picks. You've already commentated on David Montgomery. You think he's a stud. What are your thoughts on Riley Ridley, the receiver out of Georgia, Duke Shelley, the cornerback out of Kansas State, Kareth White out of Florida Atlantic, and a little known but quickly becoming a kind of a mythic figure here in Chicago because of his measurables, Steven Denmark from Valdosta State. What your thoughts on those players, please?
Well, I don't know too much about all them guys. I know Riley Ridley has got a lot of potential. And he's got, I don't know why, for whatever reason, he didn't really ever was not a number one threat there at Georgia, because the kid's got a ton of ability, man. I mean, I think he's a guy that if he gets in and you work him the ball, he can be a big-time player. The Valdosta State kid, I mean, I don't know much about him. I know that's good football is played there. You know, I think y'all got a heck of a runner there in Montgomery, and you compare you pair him with Cohen and then the addition of Mike Davis. That's a good little backfield right there. Mm-hmm. You know, you got a power guy, you got a versatile guy, and then you got a real versatile guy that's a big play threat. I mean, Cohen, man, he's one of the more big play threats in the country. But don't know too much about those other draft picks. I mean, but Kansas State, I know they always, you know, their guys are well coached usually. So that defensive back for K-State might be able to help you guys too.
Hey, Matt. So curious, my partner and I on the show, Shane Marsaw, we had this conversation prior to the draft in terms of what the Arizona Cardinals were rumored to be doing, and that's going for Kyler Murray at number 1. Now, I'm curious, your overall thoughts on A, Murray going number 1, but B, them going looks like all in on Cliff Kingsbury and his system and his offensive mind. That's a huge risk in my opinion. I'm just curious to see what your take is.
Well, yeah, it is a risk. I mean, the guy never won more than 6 games at Texas Tech. I mean, what's he going to do in the NFL? Man, those guys in the NFL, and they can figure you out in a heartbeat. I mean, especially those dudes that have been around for, Dom Capers and guys like that have been around, Bill Belichick. I mean, we saw what the Rams' high-powered offense could do against Bill Belichick, and they scored 3 points. So the thing with that pick, they took Kyler, and they really didn't address the offensive line until the end of the draft. I'm like, here y'all gave up the most sacks in the league or were up there in there for that range. I mean, their offensive line was terrible last year. And you just drafted a 5'9", 190-pound quarterback, and you're not going to protect him? I mean, what if J.J. Watt hits this dude? Those guys in the NFL are savages, man. I mean, they're fast, and they'll hit you. I mean, I think Kyler's a heck of a player. I mean, don't get me wrong, but I thought they should have addressed the offensive line with a draft that had some good linemen in it. I thought they should have gotten some guys to protect him a little bit more, and we'll see how that all plays out. David Johnson's a heck of a player, but get back to Kingsbury. I mean, and again, yeah, he can score, but again, it's what I just said. I mean, you got to play defense too. You can't just go out and score 40 points and another team score 50. I mean, it don't matter, but I think they'll score. I think he's a great offensive guy, but I just, we've talked about it at the office, and we've talked about it with our draft folks. It's like, he's just not very big, and these NFL guys, the league seems to me more where it's geared towards, guys that are versatile and can run, I mean, like a Bobby Wagner. I mean, if, these guys, those linebackers nowadays in the NFL, they're fast. Yeah. I mean, and they can hit you, and so you're running the ability against Kansas and Texas Tech and, all these other, and Baylor is going to be different than running against the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Dallas Cowboys and the Atlanta Falcons and the New England Patriots. Exactly. I mean, it's just, yep. I mean, and he's got all the built. Now, look, man, the kid's a player, man. He is a player. But he made a lot of plays running at Oklahoma. I don't know how much look at Cam Newton, guys. Cam Newton's 6'6", exactly. 235 pounds. And look at him now. He's breaking down. I mean, you just can't take those hits. I mean, can't take those hits like that, man, when you're a little guy.
If our listeners are having fun listening to Matt Lowe from Lindy Sports, then you really need to pick up the 232-page primer for the upcoming college football season. Matt, you've done a tremendous job on this magazine and also a tremendous job here. Can you tell our listeners where they can find you? Are you on Twitter or any other social media?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, Matt Lowe, and that's MattLowe 777. And during the season, I write a column called The Lowdown. I give picks on college picks on LindySports.com. And your listeners, you can find us in all the bookstores you said, Publix, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Walmart, CVS, and we're doing our national, our NFL and fantasy football digitally, so you can download those digitally.
Cool.
And we give picks throughout the season. We have game previews on our website. Our website during football season is really good. So, I mean, if you guys want to check us out then. And man, guys, I really appreciate y'all having us on, man, because it's people like you guys that help us keep going, because the publishing industry is tough right now. But, if we feel like if you put out a good product and you believe in what you're doing, and you publicize it and believe in it, you can still stick around.
Well, let me tell you on that topic right there. I am a lover of books and magazine. I understand why there's a tidal wave now moving over to the digital age because of the instantaneous nature of getting information out. But publications like this one, this college football preview, are an example of why you can't give up on the publishing business. This thing is just something that every college football and pro football fan should have at their fingertips to look through. Like I said at the beginning of the show, this thing is a page turner. It is fabulous with so much information and perfectly designed and laid out. I'm really, really happy to have you on the show and to tell our followers and listeners that they really should get their hands on Lindy Sports, the College Football National 2019 preview. Make sure you follow Matt on Twitter. Stay in touch with him. And Matt, we'll stay in touch with you. Danny and I always make it down to the Senior Bowl where if Jim Nagy and his staff are going to have us again for the third year in a row, I bet you'll be there, and we'd love to meet up with you and do maybe a quick interview or share a beer.
Oh, hey, anytime, brother. Anytime, man. And I want to also, you said something about our layout. Our graphic designer is Norbert Feliciano. He's been with Lindy's for almost 30 years. He is one of the best in the business, man. He does a great job for us. So I wanted to mention his name. And again, guys, I really appreciate y'all having us on. And we believe in our product. We take a lot of pride in it. And we have a lot of fans that still love us, and fans all over the world, to be honest, man. We had orders from Spain, Germany, London, and Japan yesterday. So it's pretty cool, man, just to know that the range of where our magazine goes.
How about that? Yeah, we've got followers,
awesome.
listeners in Vietnam and Dubai and throughout Europe and South America. So, yeah, it's one of the great things about the internet is just being able to reach out to football fans all around the world. Again, Matt, thank you very much for being on, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right, thank you, guys. Y'all have a good one.
All righty.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you.
Oh, my goodness. You know what, Danny? I'm like a junkie sometimes. You know, I can go a day or two without thinking about football, but then all of a sudden it's like a craving that I have, and I need to talk football. And talking with Matt Lowe, that took care of. That was like my fix. I really needed to hear him talk football, and the two of you guys going at it was just informative and entertaining. Good stuff, brother.
Right, Matt was just awesome. I mean, you just give him one question, and he would just run through the gamut of all the players, the scenarios, the question marks, and through all the programs in a particular conference. So yeah, I mean, talk about being passionate about what you do and about knowledgeable about the college football atmosphere and what's going on in all these conferences and all these schools. So yeah, definitely a real joy to have Matt on the show, and definitely looking forward to having him on future shows as well.
Well, and I got to tell you, before we sign off with this episode of Draft on Top, I want to take a few minutes to talk to you about what's going on with our Chicago Bears. And while there hasn't been any football, there have been OTAs, and so there's been some player interviews, and coaches have been sharing some information. And there's the big convention coming up to celebrate 100 years, and a lot of former and current Bears are going to be at the convention. So there's a lot of Chicago Bears news up in the air.
And then there's your list, your top 100 list, of course. We can't sell that short. Come on now.
Yeah, that's right. If you don't know, every day I'm coming up with a player who I consider one of my top 100 favorite Bears. And you know why I did that, Danny? It's because, the Don Pearson, Dan Pompei list of the top 100, I'm like, come on, you didn't see half of these players play, and you guys are old. So how can you say that guy is better than this guy when you didn't see one of them play? So I said, let me keep my scope of my list to what I actually saw with my eyes. And so I started paying attention to football in the late 60s and started following the stats and learning and going to the library and picking up books and stuff. I started learning about the game in the 60s. And so my list of my favorite Chicago Bears are from that starting point, which is about half of the 100 years. It's a little more than 50 years. So I'm having fun doing it, and I appreciate you bringing it up, brother.
I do have one question for you.
Okay.
Your 100th player, who was that again?
My 100th player, Vince Evans, good old number 8. Have you ever heard of him?
I thought it was Paul Ettinger, the kicker.
No, he was 99. If I got that.
99. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I'm sorry. So that means you're going to have more than one kicker on your top 100.
Yes, I am.
Because I'm assuming Butler's going to be on there. I'm assuming Robbie Gould's going to be on there.
You got that right. Those are the 3 kickers.
I know Parkey won't be on there.
I know. I was thinking of doing my top 10 most hated Bears, and he would be number 1.
Oh man, like Paul Ettinger. Wow.
You know what?
Okay.
I probably would not have put kickers on this list if I did it last year. But the whole kicking thing, and kudos to Shane Marsaw, who started sounding the alarm of concern about a year ago this time when what's his name, Cody Parkey was signed, actually more than that, 14, 15 months ago. He started getting worried, and he and Phil Atoshan were saying things like, it's going to come down to the last minute. This guy's going to cost us a game and so forth. And that started to really resonate with me. And Paul Ettinger, he had a few failures but I loved his style of kicking, that corkscrew style. He came through with 50-yard kicks in one season. He had 5 50-yarders. So I just looked back on him as a favorable guy, and I wanted to put a kicker down low on the list and make that point that we probably should not overlook kickers as much. We make a lot of fun of these guys, but they are important to the team, right?
No Jeff Jager, no Connor Barth, no. No, I agree. I mean, Ettinger, I joke, but Ettinger had a couple of good seasons there, and you're right. He made a couple of some big kicks in his career, but I was just surprised that you had more than one kicker on your list. I expected Butler and
Robbie
and Gold to be on there. Yeah, Ettinger kind of caught me off guard.
Yeah, well, and you should look at the list of guys that I got who didn't make my list of top 100, and I'm sure if you looked at this list of I had about 60 guys, because when I did my original list, I just listed guys that I liked, and I came up with 168. So I cut 68 guys in order to get Ettinger in there, and so if you were to look through that list of 68, you would probably call me a nut. For taking some of these guys out, but enough about.
Well, if I created my list of guys I liked, one guy that'd be on there would be Cool Mo D. Remember him?
Cool.
Maurice Douglas.
Oh, of course, yes.
Girl number 37.
Safety, defensive back, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I forgot that he had that nickname, Cool Mo D. Absolutely. Yeah. This guy was ripped and can really hurt running backs.
If I remember correctly, was he a stripper? Was he a male dancer?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Good memory. Who else would be on your list of favorite 100 Bears?
That wouldn't come up. Well, obviously, the main guys like Hampton, Peyton, all those guys, but some guy that out of the blue that are really. I mean, I agree with Marcus Robinson. I think he might have been higher on my list. I think he was very underrated in terms of what he did, the impact he made at receiver for the Bears. Trying to think of the off the top of my head here, a name that a lot of people might not.
Let me give you a name, and then you tell me if he's would be on your list. Okay.
Sure.
Henry Melton.
Yeah. He had a couple of good seasons, but I mean, yeah, he'd be a guy that I enjoyed watching play. If I'm basing it on your criteria of guys that I watched play and actually enjoyed watching play, yeah, he'd make it. Obviously, Thomas Jones would be on there. Willie Gault would be on there. Dennis McKenna would be on there for me. Believe it or not, Cap Bozo would be on there for me.
Oh man, he was one of the guys.
I like them as tight end. Mark Bortz, those guys from the mid to late 80s would be on there for me. Doug Flutie would not be on there for me though. That's one guy I would not have on my list. So Mike Tomczak would be on that list for me.
I would not have had Doug Flutie on my team, and it's no offense to him, but I just thought to bring him in when you did, Mike Ditka, just created a very divisive moments within the team. That team was so connected, and there was such a respect for the other quarterbacks on that team. When you brought Doug Flutie in and you started kind of talking about him, and people got the sense that, okay, this is one of Mike Ditka's creations. He wants to prove that he's the smartest man in the room by bringing in Doug Flutie. Doesn't know the playbook and blah, blah, blah. If you would have brought in Doug Flutie at the beginning of the season and let him compete, then that's a different story. But right. I thought he ruined that season with the whole Flutie thing. Yeah, I agree. And to put him in the playoff game where you have a veteran like Tom's, not that Tom's was great, but he was a veteran that been on the team for all the whole season. It's like it was just it rubbed a lot of players the wrong way, and you just saw it just the Bears couldn't do anything in that game offensively, and Flutie was a big part of it. Just kind of thinking off the top of my head here, like guys like Trace Armstrong would be on my team, Chris Zorich would be on my team, guys that I've watched play and enjoy the way they play the game. Minter, the linebacker, number 92, would be on my team as well. Oh, okay. Just, obviously Mike Brown, Urlacher, all those guys. But yeah, some of those guys that Tommy Waddle would be on my team, obviously. Yeah. Wendell Davis would be on my team. Jeff Graham, Curtis Conway, guys like that would be on my team. For you young bloods listening out there, Wendell Davis was a wide receiver for the Chicago Bears who blew both knees. Both knees, and that terrible AstroTurf they had in Philadelphia. Oh my gosh! I mean, that should have been a lawsuit. I don't know if Wendell Davis ever sued the Philadelphia Eagles for that, but he should have. That just ruined his career. This guy, in today's NFL, Wendell Davis would have easily caught 90-plus passes a year. He was that kind of, underneath receiver who could get open, excellent hands. It's just a shame that his career was cut short by that shoddy turf that the NFL. He was going up for a for a pass. He was going to go jump and catch the ball, and both his knees just blew out there. It was crazy. I'd never heard or seen anything like that, at that point. Brad Muster. What do you think of Brad Muster? Would he be on your team? Brad did not make my team. No, he did not make my favorite guys. And you've already mentioned a few guys, but I won't give it all away, that did not make my list. And I'm looking over my list right now, and I'm saying to myself, maybe I should take this guy out and put that guy in. No. Go with your gut. You make the list. Go with that. There's always. It's a great franchise over 100 years. You're going to have a lot of players that are not going to make all these lists. So that's what's great about these lists is because everyone's got their own top favorite players. So a lot of the guys I rattle off, a lot of people might not have thought of or might not even like. So it's just everyone's got their own list, and that's what makes it fun. We all can kind of compare and contrast and say, oh yeah, well, you like him? No, I like him better. Stuff like that, which makes it fun. Right. And the one sad thing about this list is that when you consider that I've been following the Chicago Bears for 52 years now, the amount of quarterbacks, or the lack of quarterbacks on my list is pretty sad. But you know what? We've come to a point in the history of the Chicago Bears where the appreciation for what a quarterback does for a team is now front and center, and you have to build a team around the quarterback. He may not need to be a prolific passer with a gigantic arm and so forth, but you have to strategically bring in a quarterback who is going to lead the organization, complement the players around them, and it looks like with Ryan Pace and now Matt Nagy that the Chicago Bears have finally figured that out, and hopefully Mitch Trubisky is going to be the guy, and in 10 years maybe he'll be at the top of my list near the players I got there, right? Yeah, just the way that game has evolved. It's if you don't have a quarterback nowadays, you have no chance. Before, back in the if you want to call them the olden days, it was you have a solid running game. You have a tough defense that doesn't give up a lot of points. You have a quarterback that doesn't lose a game for you, and you could win. You could be successful. You can make it the playoffs year after year. Might even win a Super Bowl. Who knows? But nowadays, the way that the offense is evolved, you have to have a quarterback, and you have not only the weapons around the quarterback, not only the protection with the offensive line, the running back, so on and so forth. You have to have a head coach or a play caller that can placate to the strength and the weaknesses of this quarterback, and not put this person in a position to
fail or have, ask him to do things he cannot do. So everything revolves around that quarterback. And that's why when they say they're drafting the face of the franchise, they really are drafting the face of the franchise when they're going and plucking one of these young guys from college.
Which is a good segue to how I wanted to leave the show, which is to get your thoughts on what has transpired during OTAs. And one of the big storylines I feel that has been coming out of Hallis Hall is everyone's opinion about Mitch Trubisky, and that it is visible to certain coaches like Mark Helfrich, the offensive coordinator, that Trubisky looks much more confident, that he is, I think the quote was, night and day difference between the Mitch Trubisky of last year at this point to the Mitch Trubisky now, his knowledge of the playbook, his confidence in himself, and so forth. I want to get your thoughts on that. Do you think that, May at this point is just talk? We shouldn't put too much into it. We got to see him in pads and stuff. Or do you get encouraged by that kind of talk?
Well, I agree that it's just talk at this point. We got to see the actual play on the field, have it translate, to the field. But this is not something that I wasn't expecting or wasn't anticipating. Remember last year we were talking after the early portion of the season, after those games, it looked like Trubisky was out there thinking more than just reacting, more than just relying on his God-given physical ability. He was more so trying to process the game, trying to memorize some plays in terms of where a receiver is going to break and how far that route is going to go. So, but then towards the tail end of the season, whether it's the coaching staff tailing back some of the information they were giving him, or just like we just talked about, placating to his strengths and calling plays that he was doing well in or he understood, you saw him get better and better. And now being in a full, going to his second season, another off season to this offense, and him and Coach Nagy becoming closer and each one knowing each other and kind of finishing each other's thoughts, if you will. I anticipate this being growing or this progression of Mitchell Trubisky to occur. And now the only thing we have to see is just it actually happened on the field. And with the type of weapons that Ryan Pace and the rest of the scouting staff has put around Trubisky, I just think right now the offense is going to be something that we haven't seen in a long time around here. And we're going to be, a team that's going to be a heavily, not just heavily, but a team that relies on their offense to put up points on the scoreboard, and going to have a defense that's going to be able to play off of that. Instead of we're hoping for a defense to create turnovers, to get our offense in a position within the 20-yard line to hopefully get a field goal or possibly even a touchdown. Mm-hmm. It's going to be flipped a little bit here. We're going to anticipate this offense going out, putting pressure on opposing defenses, and giving our defense a lead, and having them just pin their ears back and go after the opposing quarterback.
The other major storyline, there's been multiple major storylines, but we'll only pick three, and that was one. Number two is Chuck Pagano talking about Khalil Mack moving forward towards the quarterback much more often now and dropping back less. Your thoughts on that?
That must have made my partner Shane Marshall real happy.
It did.
Because that was one of the biggest beefs. That they hated when, and I agree, they hated when Mack was asked to drop back in coverage under Vic Fangio's scheme last year. But yeah, that's the thing. That's what we were told. Pagano was going to bring a more aggressive mindset to the system. He was, he knew the system, he knew the players, but he was going to add a couple more wrinkles to it. And whether I was just extra blitzes, more design blitzes, probably some less coverage, whether it's exotic or not, but he was going to have the opposing quarterback be under pressure, whether it's, like I said, Mack coming off the edge, or if you're going to play stunts or loops with Mack and Floyd, we knew he was going to be aggressive. So that's another thing that I'm looking forward to seeing develop as the year goes on. Last season, you and I talked, and we would say, all right, the offense is going to be kind of getting their feet wet and getting their feet underneath them and kind of getting used to everybody, while the defense, he needed to carry the Bears through the first portion of the season. I think it's going to be flipped this year. I think the offense is going to have to start carrying the Bears the early portion of the season until the defense, again, majority are all the same players. I think was it 10 of the 11 starters are all back on defense. Mm-hmm. It's just there's going to be an adjustment period between Pagano and the players. At least I anticipate there be an adjustment period. So while that adjustment period occurs, the defense might not be up to par, but I definitely expect them to, catch up pace with the offense. And once that does, that's when you're going to see the Bears hit their momentum and start racking wins together week after week.
And the third major storyline, which is the one that I hate to talk about most, but we have to talk about it, is the kicking situation. The Bears traded with the Oakland Raiders for kicker Eddie Pinheiro. He is now competing against Chris Blewett and Elliott Fry. Blewett has not really played professionally. At least I don't think he's been in any games. He has been with a team or two, and Elliott Fry had an excellent season over at the Alliance, where he was perfect in his field goal attempts. And Pinheiro came out of college. He was undrafted free agent, I believe, for the Raiders, and they were really high on him. He had some excellent numbers at Florida, but he failed to make the team because of an injury. He got injured, and the replacement for him, won the job, and so the Raiders felt that he was what's the word? They felt that they could do without him. Word is that Chris Blewett is probably in the lead in that competition. What are your thoughts on this kicking competition? Do you think that we're going to see some more names in there? And do you think that a guy named Chris Blewett could potentially be the kicker for the Chicago Bears?
Remember, it's French. It's Bluet.
No, he said that it wasn't. Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. He should have played along and said, yeah, whatever.
Exactly. Well, just because this thing is going to be lingering until they finally get this position of kicker resolved. So just like it compelled you to add 3 kickers to your top 100, it's going to compel Bears fans to have nightmares of the double doink. Until we have a reliable kicker. And I know they have these 3 guys in camp or in these voluntary workouts and the offseason stuff. I still am under the belief that by the time the season starts, there will be a veteran kicker somehow, some way. I'm not saying it's going to be Robbie Gould, but there's going to be a veteran kicker on this roster because, and I've said it throughout this offseason, if you are a legitimate Super Bowl contender, if you peg yourself as a legitimate Super Bowl contender, it's going to be tough to go into a season with a rookie kicker. Minnesota tried to do it last year, and the kicker lost, blew a couple of kicks early on. They lost a game or two, and then they got rid of him quickly. So, if you're going to be a Super Bowl contender, you got to have a veteran. Now, do I want one of these kids to step up and be, the next Adam Vinatieri, next Robbie Gould? Heck, that'd be great. Whether it's Pinheiro, whether it's Blewett, whether it's Fry, one of them just go out there and win the damn job. That'd be great, but I still have this feeling that there's going to be a veteran on this roster come opening game.
All right. Well, I'm not quite convinced of that. I shouldn't say that. My hope is that these 3 kickers are going to really start to turn it on, and it's going to make it very, very tough for Ryan Pace and the rest of the Bears management to make a decision from these 3 guys. But hey, whatever it takes, at this point, this roster looks like it's championship ready, with the exception of that one slot, the kicking position, and so let's cure that. Danny, any final thoughts for your followers here on Draft on Tap?
I just want to say, I'm real excited and looking forward to what we got coming for you guys in the upcoming months and weeks here in terms of, bringing you all the prospective draft prospects to look at and to research and follow throughout the upcoming college football season. Because like they say that draft season is it's never done. It's always you're always grinding. You're always looking at it. NFL scouts are out now. They're making their school visits, or they're lining up their school visits. They're out there. They have their list, and they're actually going out there and they're starting to scout right now. during spring practice and all this stuff. So it's a never-ending cycle. You get about a 3 to 4 week retrieval there, and then it's back on scouting to the next class. So I'm looking forward to working with you, Aldo, with Shane, and the other great guests that we're going to have on this show, and just continue to bring as much knowledge as we can in terms of the prospects out there, the guys to keep an eye on, the teams in college football that are making moves, the different types of offensive systems that are now infiltrating themselves from the college ranks into the NFL. All this stuff is going to be talked about So yeah, I'm just looking forward to it. And again, if you have any suggestions or any guys you want us to hit up or discuss, particularly on any show, just follow me on Twitter or hit me up on Twitter. Again, once again, I'm at dshimon56. Hit up Aldo and or Shane and just let us know, and we'll try to do our best to get information for you on that particular player and what the forecast for that particular team or that college is coming up for the upcoming season.
Danny nailed it again. He nailed it from 43 yards out. Is that the magic number, 43?
43, my friend. Double doink.
No double doink from Danny. That was straight through the uprights. And I won't say anything else other than no Bears 100 proof this week. We should be back next week or not. We'll keep you posted. Follow us on Twitter at Bears Barroom for all the latest. Our Facebook account is Bears Barroom. Follow us there for information. We'll keep you posted on what's going on with Bears 100 Proof and all our other shows. As we get into the summer months, we're going to be having some fun here with lots of cool programming outside of football and inside of football. We've got you covered, and let your friends know about the Bears Barroom Radio Network. Danny Shimon, thanks very much for your time and your expertise, and thanks very much to our guest, Matt Lowe from Lindy Sports. We will talk to you soon. And remember, if you drink, do not drive, and always